So,
Did I manage?
go ahead.
Okay. This feature is to, if you like to use the hardware acceleration in servers. Yeah, currently, I mean the hardware accelerators maybe come widely and widely, and if we can use the hardware to do comprise or other things, I mean the performance will be improved a lot. Okay, we give an example in the slide. For example, we have a 30 gig batch file, and if we use hardware to do comprise, it only needs several. I can check the detail number. I mean, maybe several, just 2 seconds or 3 seconds. Okay, let me check.
What's the new? Huh?
9 seconds. The time to transfer is about 9 seconds. Yeah, but if without the hardware, it leaves 23 seconds.
Well, comparing the two numbers doesn't really work because what I discovered when I looked into this is we don't do compression for these images without hardware, which we should do. So I wrote a bug for that, but it kind of throws off what the numbers mean.
Yeah. So, let me check. When we use the QME balance image, it needs 23 seconds. Okay. So we would like to add a new type of image, and this image is a gzip format.
Is it a gzip raw image?
Gzip raw?
Well, I mean, what is it exactly? Is it just a raw disk image?
Just gzip format, and there is no hardware acceleration. We can use gzip to do decompress.
So it's just gzip raw image.
Gzip what?
So what are you
gzipping?
gzipping?
What's right?
What are you gzipping? Is it a QCOW? Is it a raw image? What is it?
It is a kind of zip compressed format.
No. When you ungzip it, what do you get?
Yes.
I guess that's from us, right?
No, I understand what gzip is. The question
Yeah.
is what's inside of the gzip.
Inside of gzip.
Is it just a raw image?
No. It's a compressed format. That means it has zip header and then the compressed data. So QEMU can't use the gzip directly.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
We have to decompress and then use it.
But
So it's not using it.
it's not using it directly.
It sounds like it's
then.
just a raw image, I think,
Okay.
because I don't know what else it would be. That's what I was trying to.
I mean, with the raw image and then we quick compress it. Yeah, we just install a virtual machine and create some files on the virtual machine and then we compress the image.
Okay.
Why are you trying to compress that image? I mean, I don't think you're going to get much compression out of that.
Well, so
What is she trying to solve?
so there actually is a good reason for it, I think.
It's also a compression tool. With the data, the data and the data can decrease a lot. And then when you, for example, you have a 30 gig batch raw image, and then it can be compressed into less than 10 gig batch, and then we just need to transfer the small zip file to the glass store.
Yeah, so the context that, at least the part of it that I found useful was that when you're uploading and downloading to Glance,
Yeah.
we can compress images and then transfer and store less data over the network and in Glance. And it turns out that there was a trivial way that we could have already been doing this in Cinder, because we do a QEMU image convert to QCOW2 or something to upload to Glance.
Yeah.
And you can add an argument to that says compress it.
Oh,
Which would
QEMU will compress
yeah.
itself?
Without the hardware thing and all that. And that's something I went and wrote a bug because it was kind of like, well, we should probably do that already.
Yeah.
So this then gives you a hardware accelerated way to do the same thing.
I mean, the one advantage I can see here is I've seen control nodes just bogged down to all heck when doing a bunch of boot from volumes because their processors are all sucked up doing QEMU image stuff.
Yes, this is why years ago we talked about the Cinder data service.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Creating
that's
a Cinder
right.
data service to
Okay, so
overcome
this-
because you could spread that
Yep.
across.
So this is kind of a different solution to that using, so is it, what hardware accelerators are you using for this? Just like,
Elementor has QAT and FPGA. And
Okay.
also other components, FPGA cards can do the compress.
okay,
Yeah. And also with the hardware accelerator, I mean, the CPU, we can save the CPU a lot because
Right.
it doesn't need the CPU to do the compress.
Well, it doesn't use the CPU to do it.
So
It doesn't use the CPU now because we don't do it, but we should do it.
Yes.
So I assume what's going to happen here is we'll have some kind of, I don't think the spec really explained how this was going to plug in too much other than, I guess in convert image, we'll have the ability to say, pass it through the hardware thing, pass it through QEMU image, and there'll be different paths, right? Depending on whether you're using a hardware accelerator or not.
With the hardware to do compression or decompression, I mean, the commands are different. We may use we have a special command to do the compress.
Yeah, it's a CLI interface for it.
I think we need to do, I mean, inside, for example, inside the Cinder volume, when we upload for example, a image to a gun store, we need to compress the Cinder volume inside.
Right.
Yeah, that means we need to call a command or call a library to do the compress.
Right.
Yeah.
So it is custom command that does that operation, the compression.
Compression or with function.
I mean, how does compression?
It calls to a shell tool, I think.
This shell.
Yeah.
So when you
Yeah,
So-
for example,
yeah.
So one thing to be aware of is we already have, I thought, where'd it go? We already have the ability to do something like this in backup. I thought.
In backup, yeah, we can't do in backup, we have to do compression.
Yeah, but we actually had a pluggable algorithm tool thing or something in there for this, right? Maybe not.
nonetheless, this would make sense to use for backup as well.
Yeah, it just has to be integrated in a different place. But, well, I don't know. See, that's tricky though, because the problem is if you do backup with this. So is it standard gzip?
Standard
So,
gzip,
okay, because you have to make
yes.
sure you can uncompress it later
Mhm.
if you're doing backup with it. But if it's just gzip, then yeah, that should be fine.
And so we're saying about this new format, this compression format. Will KVM understand this format? Can we IMG? Do you understand the PTG?
I think the assumption is that we're going to uncompress it before it gets passed to that.
So where does the uncompressed image go to then?
It would go through convert image like we do. Well, let's go into Glance.
But can't Nova actually get a hold of that image too? Bypassing Cinder? When you
Yeah,
do
so this
boot
means
from-
that you need code in Nova that would uncompress it to use it.
Is there uncompression in Nova already?
Probably not, but-
So then that kind of kills all of this, I think.
Well,
there
it
is-
doesn't kill it. It just means you have to go add format handling in Nova for
Well, so there's currently OVF or OVA container formats. So there are two things with the image. There's the container format and the image format. So I think this would actually be a container format change to indicate that it's gzipped. And the OVA, I think both OVA and OVF are gzipped.
they're like zip files, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
it's not unprecedented.
right. So, and it's
We could just ask the
possibly-
Nova team, do they support gzipped images?
I'm pretty sure they don't, but it sounds like it wouldn't be that hard to do it. The difference is QEMU can handle OVF, right?
I'm not exactly sure.
Well, I think, I mean, QEMU image can, I think you can like run an OVF. And that's the difference here is you have to like uncompress it and then use it. Because I don't, unless we think that QEMU can just run one of these, but I think that's not the idea, right?
I'm not sure. I mean, so OVF and OVA, they both, I think with OVF, you have to have a XML descriptor.
Right.
It's usually just left empty. And with OVA, everything's tarred and then compressed.
And
Is there any way today to do compression for these, for everything compression?
for what?
At the same thing, these do, but not with these.
So you can do compression natively in QCOW2, which was the part that I started looking at because we don't currently, but we could if we wanted to, which I think we probably do actually want to. So, I mean, it sounds to me like it's
Yes.
pretty reasonable. I mean, we need to have a clear picture of, that the Nova side knows what to do with this and can actually use it. But I mean, in general, it seems to make sense to me.
So you're saying that Human has a way to do it.
Well, it doesn't.
It doesn't.
Nova will have to ungzip it
No,
for,
I mean, to QEMG, it has a way to do the compression, right?
not for this format. For QCOW2, it does.
So it has a way to compress, but it has its own format.
Well, it's part of the QCOW2 format. The compression can be done in QCOW2.
Yeah, so my idea was to use, to enable Cinder to do the both ways of compression.
Yeah, and I think that's what we
If
need
it's
to do.
possible to do this compression, optimize it, we can go, or we can do the.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what we'll want to do is have it where you can plug it in cinder.conf, which way you want to do it or not do it. Because you really don't want to do it for maybe encrypted images or something. But,
So I think we're in agreement that this is okay for her to go forward on and work details through the spec.
yeah, I mean, the big thing is that we're going to need some infrastructure for how to let people pick this versus the QEMU image compression versus not, and have it kind of as a knob and Cinder to pick what you want to use. That I think this didn't really get into the details of that yet. So there's probably a lot of detail to figure out there. But I think it's a,
Thanks for coming over to our room. There are donuts in the Nova room. You can help yourselves,
Oh,
but I didn't bring them over because they're already situated over there.
cool. I'm wielding my power for once and saying, you guys come to me. I said, I'm wielding my power for once and saying, you guys come to me. Okay.
Recording equipment trump card.
Yes.
We're not
this is true.
Sorry, what does it mean? How this will be controllable?
How do you say we're doing compression in just with QEMU, we're using acceleration and gzipped files and that kind of stuff. You have to be able to enable it, disable it, and configure where the accelerator is, that kind of stuff. Not like, like specifically tunable, which actually now that the Nova team is here, should we ask as well?
Sure.
So they're proposing being able to gzip images using an accelerator, which for us kind of makes sense. What's more complicated is what happens when Nova tries to use it and decompress it. Do you guys have anything else like that?
Yeah, sorry. Because
Yeah, we have
image,
PTG.
we can use the
We have
formula
PTG
to do the compress.
Okay,
Oh, yeah. So that would do the same thing.
okay.
What was that, sorry?
We have key caps into raw. So, I think you're saying, do we have a thing in Nova where we have a glance image which is in the format that we can't use directly and we have to transform it before we can use it?
Right,
Yeah, we do.
okay.
Yeah.
Key caps into raw.
So for this, instead of QCal2 to raw, they would need gzip to raw.
Okay. And would you be supportive of adding in options to use an accelerator to do that? To support it?
We support gzip raw today, don't we? Or do we
I
not?
think so.
Okay.
Jesus specifically wouldn't be hard to do. You should probably just do it in my way with it. Which would require additional storage.
The question was about using an accelerator for it?
Yeah.
Accelerator sounds complicated.
And what does that look like, running a special binary to do it?
Yeah.
I'm kind of hoping that there would be an Oslo library that's like, I do gzip, and it just magically did the right thing.
What use it?
Yeah.
Well,
Because if it's on the host, it detects it's an accelerator, it goes, woohoo, go fast.
so do it as a library that can be utilized by both Cinder and Nova.
Yeah. And it just has config that says, I must be accelerated equals true and not fail if it's not there, whatever. Just a library problem.
Does this go into OS Brick?
Well, it's more general, isn't it?
I think it's more like Oslo
Yeah.
utils kind of thing.
Yeah,
I think you'd want this kind of, it's just a Python. This might be a useful Python wrapper for people generally trying to consume accelerated gzip, I guess.
does that make sense at all?
I mean, the Python library is supported here.
So if instead of doing it just in Cinder and trying to figure out what we do in Nova, you you add something to Oslo utils or what have you, that's a library function that then both Cinder and Nova can utilize to do it.
So by default, it doesn't use accelerator, but maybe there's a configuration option that says, use this thing, and it just activates special mode.
Yeah.
That sounds like a reasonable way to go about it, not have code duplication and stuff like that.
I mean, we don't support gzip images, so Nova can't use it right now.
Yeah. What is that? How do we tell from when this is gzip?
Well, right now, don't you support OVAs?
Well, not generally.
Oh,
So it's the
okay.
container format, basically.
Right.
Not this format, but container format would be gzip?
I think so.
That's what I was thinking.
So it'd be
but-
raw in gzip for the container, I presume. The Zen API driver does technically support a weird ass gzip
Okay.
format, but
That's just the Zen driver. Okay.
given it's got no working CI and we may be deprecating it, that could be a mute point.
So right now, container format
You get the,
Raw, I assume,
yeah,
and so you're thinking there would be a gzip in there that says this format is P.2 and container format. This is content encoding. basically.
yeah.
Yeah, that would make it pretty easy to do just on the download. So when we chunk data, we just compress it.
Yeah, it should just be another stream pipe for the, with the library and Oslo utils.
So we need to update the, post Oslo util library to support the HTML compress. Okay, that is the most. So do we need to use a PTG instead of Nova for this?
So the blueprint in Nova would be supporting this new image format that's gzip.
And then you run in Glance for the new image format, which would be pretty simple.
Probably a spec in Nova. So I think you want to tie up the fact that Glance has made the change.
Well, then there's two pieces, right? There's supporting gzip container and using the library to gzip, which is kind of like just.
Yeah. So I think what I would do is you're talking with the Cinder people, get it working nicely in Cinder. That'll coordinate with Glance. Then you can come to Nova and try to get support in Nova, I guess.
Yeah.
And by that point, you'll have had all the details worked out, so it should be pretty easy. That's what I would do.
Erno's not going to be plussed by this.
No, because it's going to be just bits to Glance, doesn't matter.
Okay.
We just need to add the format.
Okay.
So that everybody else can recognize that it's something new.
Okay.
Yeah. There used to be a bug in gzip where you could have an infinite file. That's been fixed, right?
Feature.
Yeah, sorry, that's the word. We'll ignore that for now. I'm hoping that Oslo util will protect us against such foes. And fix the halting problem at the same time. You've got me to back this session.
Yes. And now that this was in our Etherpad, I'll move over to the cross project one. Okay. Thank you for your input on that. That was helpful. Are you good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Nova, for joining us in here. It's appreciated. Cross project discussion. From the Cinder Etherpad, we've got it linked. So we've got 1, 2, 3, and a fourth coming on. Subjects. Do you want to lead, Eric, or do you care? Or you want me to lead? Okay, thanks. Wow, this is a different interaction with Nova this time around. Okay, so swap volume API woes. Where's Lee? Hey.
So swap volume update API has long been a source of problems in that stream. Recently, it's online where the current implementation is failing trying to be called by significant direct volume migration. Direct volume migration is never actually tested in our templates. So that's what we're actually using testing templates. But it's another long series of bugs where you're essentially overloading single APIs into different things. You call it directly around it, you swap between two volumes, and then somebody's obviously using it for retyping and also direct migration as well. So what I want to experience today is essentially the idea of breaking the API into two, into an API to cover the original use case with Nova, the admin family use case, that we could potentially deprecate and remove. If you look on our search at the current documentation, there's a big warning. We know that documentation saying that this is typically used as part of a large workflow and shouldn't be used directly by admins, but that isn't enough. People still use it. So I'd like to potentially allow us to get rid of this somehow. But
Yeah.
in doing so, we then have to create another API facilities, obviously. It's one of those things.
Can I suggest a way forward to see if it's crazy? So I added a thing at the end of the spec, the end of this Etherpad where I was going to talk about using the Nova service tokens, using service tokens when Nova talks to Cinder to lock down the policy on Cinder APIs. But we can do the reverse for this API, can we not? Basically require that it's got a Cinder service token alongside a user token to authorize the action, and then just keep the API the same and change the default policy.
Meaning, make it so that you can't do it.
Yeah, by default. Well, people should go to Cinder to do this operation rather than calling Nova.
By default, they can't unless they're admins anyways. So, if they're just overriding that policy, doesn't this happen from overriding the policy?
Even still, they're using it as fast as we do.
We can, so this could be a scope check so that it's just not overridable in policy.
Not really successful. When really using non-syndicated.
Oh, in that case, I mean, people are using it, it's just like other jobs.
Yeah, so I personally wouldn't want to keep it around. I'd much rather say, okay, this is done, this is a new API, and this is how you use it, and be explicit from the start that it's just this one use case.
So, okay, so two
Try to
things.
get them to do that.
Yeah.
So, okay, so there's a new API for admins to call if they want to do this directly.
I would be cool with like, because the whole doing this, what, online prevention stuff is super.
Oh, yeah, true.
So if we, ideally, this should have been like a server action like everything else that we ever had.
Yeah.
So that's one, if you're writing an API, I should probably do.
Well, yeah, I suppose.
So there's kind of two parts to the discussion. One is what we just said. So there's a few problems with the current API. One is the fact that it's callable by other than Cinder, which even when it succeeds has weirdness. So if the volume ID changes and but the serial ID doesn't, which is odd. The other thing is that it's fragile because it has a callback from Nova Cinder. It's fragile because if the instance isn't running, when Cinder calls it, it breaks. It's fragile because if the instance stops running, well, Cinder is calling it, it breaks. It's fragile because if it fails for any reason and the callback isn't called by Nova, it's not recoverable via any of the actions later. So it requires rediscovery. So there's some problems with it, which it would be nice to fix. And I read a Mendes post about an alternative which has a bunch of advantages, but I'd like to park that one for a second because the reasons I'll come to after. So yeah, it'd be nice to it would be nice to fix the permissions thing, but also address robustifying kind of what it's doing currently.
Yeah, I think if we break it out and remove the guessing which is in there at the moment about what we're actually doing, it would be partly justified, but then you'll strong enough to then introduce even more APIs on top of that to control back and forth between some of the nodes. But I think that's another step later on once the underlying functionality is there and the version support that. I think initially the first part of breaking the sequence part of this background is simple and it essentially saves a load of errors and stuff in the short term. And then we need to want something that really work in the whole conversation.
So-
There's no enablement getting with the
So I proposed an alternate API, I don't know if you've read it, that would basically have, the three APIs that we're going to do. The first one is Cinder says to Nova, stop writing this attachment, I'm going to migrate it. And then at some point in the future, Cinder says to Nova, resume writing for this new attachment, which is now a copy of the old attachment. And through some queuing tricks, we can actually, on the Nova side, stay and rewrite the whole time through that operation. Except that it can't, because there's one bit of the equation that queuing does that isn't disclosed by it, but yeah. But the advantage of that was one, it should be an awful lot faster, especially in the case where the Cinder array supports some kind of smart fast copying between the source and destination of the migration. And then Nova, instead of piping all the bits through Nova, Nova's then basically just doing sticking a filter in the whatever was written in the intervening period is just being flushed.
The word that I think when you have a value case, I'm sure that certain words are unable to do that. It's just a matter of
yes. So Kasia discovered that for me this morning. We were discussing it, and he sanity checked what I was talking about. We were missing it.
Is this like NDB mirror between both volume endpoints or something?
But change mapping file is a runtime command. It says the offline variant of community relays. So the relays command just changes the backing file.
So can I interrupt? Our time is really limited here today.
Right.
And this is all kind of Nova internals, it sounds like. Could we maybe move on to topics
Well,
where
so
we,
this is the-
I was going to talk about failure point of view. One of the interactions I like about this is that the failure mode is always obvious in the interaction. So Cinder says to Nova, stop writing here, and Nova stop writing it, whether or not we get to if Cinder says do the swap, Nova does the swap, whether or not we get to or either of those operations fails, in which case Cinder rolls back. And the failure is always obvious. There's no if we miss the callback because of reasons, we're in some weird state and even so there is no callback. And the other thing I liked about it was that it only used attachments, so it was never exposing this temporary fake volume ID to Nova, which is kind of a whole warp there in the current stop volume API. But yeah, so where I was going with that is, even though we can't implement it, so much of the detail there was relevant. It would be nice to also address the failure modes. So the problem of the current one, we can hide it, we can make it Cinder only. But if we're going to do that, I think if we're going to make a change, we should also make a change that allows us to fail reliably. And I don't think we can do that.
I just think that's something that we follow on from learning. I don't think that does that.
It does.
It's like a system update, we just change the one API, change like the actual platform for it's a whole big system.
There's a whole load of stuff like, I think, maybe I'm just saying +1 what you're saying. But if we move to there's a single API, it's only being called by Cinder, you get rid of all that junk where we're guessing, like you say. We can probably do a whole heap of this use new libvirt niceness in there anyway. I agree we should probably consider the design, a different design, but it seems like step 1 is stop admins doing this crazy thing. Step 2 is we know the API is a bit nuts, so let's just move that to somewhere we want it to be. Cinder can start calling that new API and fall back to the old micro version of the other API. We can tidy that up so it's just doing one thing well, one thing kind of well.
External events that we have this today that have been online, it's purely for like inter-service communication.
Yeah.
Oh, send an external
The
event
thing
for
that
swap.
sucks is, like, we're starting to do that to hide the policy thing, and then, like, eventually we'll rewrite everything, fire more orchestrated, work that Matt's talking about. It is a tough turn, like, we couldn't know that, so
Yeah. Oh, so rather than add a new API, just use external events to give the swap in. It's not synchronous though, is it? Oh, it's not anyway.
Yeah, can we, I think that the details need to be hammered out in a spec. It doesn't sound like there's a huge impact on Cinder here yet. So let's cover some of the other topics we have that require all of us in the room, and then we can get back to this once you guys have I mean, it sounds like having it improved would be good. And then we'll work the details when you need us further on that.
I guess the key thing is we're making swap volume happen. You could call volume migration through Cinder. That's what we're saying. I think we agree that we want to keep doing that in Cinder. So that's good.
Yes, agreed.
We'll make it.
Because that's what we do.
Yeah, exactly. We're saying we're going to stop admins doing that, and that seems sensible because we should do it in Cinder.
Yep.
So that's good agreement.
Yep.
We'll get on the details. You don't seem appalled by the details, so that's good.
No.
we should remove our command line shit that allows us to do this, like, maybe that would be.
Oh, good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, maybe we should make this so easy for people to do it.
Yeah, and that would also help solve the problem.
And so
Okay.
we might eventually get another API to call instead of swap volume. Is that what you're saying too, with the events?
You guys already use the external events API for volume extended, so this is already got the Cinder can use for taking microversion.
Just
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
yeah, usual microversion to do something here.
Okay. Cool. We're good with all that.
Sounds like we actually agreed a plan there, actually.
Idea of transferring ownership of Cinder resources.
Yeah, I just wanted to discuss this briefly. I probably won't take a few minutes, but
Okay.
we had a forum session on Monday about the transferring of ownership of like instances and volumes and all of that. It was a follow-up session that has been discussed before, and in trying to take some steps forward, we were talking about the tool that Dan Smith wrote, the OS Chown command line tool that does the database swapping of the owners of different resources, basically. And we were talking about like how could we use that as a starting point for actually doing something, like getting something going for being able to transfer resources. And the concern around using OS Chown as is was just that like questions about what about the maintenance of the code going over time, and what about testing and regression testing and all those things. And so we were thinking like, what if each project owned their portion of ownership transfer? Like the current code in OS Chown divides it up into like Neutron, Cinder, Nova, and then we were thinking like, what if Cinder kind of owned that piece that directory of code as like a plugin or something. So that it's in the Cinder tree and you can like do your testing over it.
And this tool will just consume it as a plugin, I guess.
Yeah, so it's similar to the idea of like OpenStack client plugins, I guess, where you own the code and you can do all the testing in your tree and make sure that it continues to work over different releases and such. And then how that would be consumed can vary. The people in the room really like the idea of a REST API, so there are some, there could be like a tiny service, or there could be, somebody suggested an adjunctant workflow. I don't personally know much about that, but anyway, I was just wondering, like, do people like that idea at all, or do you have, or is it, are there concerns where you don't think it would be a good idea?
Well, I guess I'm not, are you familiar with OS Chone? I haven't.
Yeah, I'm completely oblivious.
Oblivious.
Okay. I don't know a ton about it either, but the idea is that like if you want to transfer like your volumes from one project to another, it will connect to the Cinder database and swap the IDs basically on everything.
We already have a way of transferring volumes.
The intent of it was to be to encapsulate database surgery to avoid having to put this entire workflow into whatever the last piece of the chain was, which is no problem. But it was really intended to be an operator type override tool kind of thing. It was intended to be very modular so that, you could add a piece for a project, but in the Nova case, it's very database surgery-ish, where we just are updating the row. For you guys, I actually just call the Python side of your change ownership stuff. So it doesn't do it through the API because it kind of needs to be done in concert with Nova's notion of that attachment, right? But it does call your routines to do it, just not the API.
So the difference is this allows it to be done like in a batch format instead of one at a time?
Well, the Neutron stuff, Neutron basically said this is not going to be a thing. So it lets you start an instance and resolve all of the downstream resources of it. And so it'll be like, here's an instance and it has all of these actions and oh, it's got a Neutron port, fail. So you can detach the Neutron port and then it says, okay, I got an instance, got all these actions. Oh, I've got a volume attached. So it will do the volume change ownership and then the instance change ownership. It lets you do this of kind of like a tree of things.
Okay.
Where that tree is currently just basically instances and volumes. But it tries to do that all kind of in concert instead of like if you just used your API to do this, you would end up changing the volume, the ownership of a volume, but like the instance hasn't moved yet,
Okay.
So it just, but again, like Nova doesn't have an API for that, so it's just all kind of in the back end. So automating this or providing an API in front of it is fine, but it's still pretty like direct.
So is this considered to be like an admin hack it, fix it tool?
That's what I wrote it for, so that people weren't doing this by themselves with SQL. That was what I wrote it for.
I see.
And to kind of demonstrate also like how non-trivial it is to just like, we'll just throw this flow in Nova because, it's got to resolve all these resources on top of these other things and everything.
Does it consider part of the secrets?
No, it does three things. You have no network because Neutron's not going to do that. And it handles instances and volumes, and that's it. But it's modular so that you could throw something in there for bugging if you want.
Volumes.
Sure.
So right now, Article doesn't have the API for transferring ownership secrets yet.
Yeah, neither does Nova. No, it
Probably accelerators,
doesn't support accelerators. it really was just a structure of a operator tool that would be modular enough, and I implemented the things that I wanted to demonstrate, and it can be extended. That's what it is. And I haven't touched it since.
You hacked it out in a couple of days of the last day.
Yeah.
So I guess the proposal here is either extracting what you guys have for the volume piece and put it in Cinder's tree, and then we maintain that aspect of it, and we do whatever we deem is right with respect to Cinder's internals.
Yeah, so right now it's just, Python modules in a Python module, a module. It would be putting a stevedore loader on it so that then the thing could live in your side. And then it would just, the reason, yours is so simple, but the reason to do it might be, or the thing that you might gain out of it is you can put a bunch of extra things in there and like say, this is encrypted, so here's a bar. Every module can like emit resources that need to be also changed as part of this. And so the thing tries to like do kind of package dependency and say, okay, I started with an instance, but now I've come up with 4 new imports, a volume, a bunch of actions, and these are the things that need to happen kind of semi-atomically. So you guys would say, oh, by the way, here's a Barbican key ID that's going to have to go as well. And currently that would cause the process to fail because it doesn't have to do that for Barbican. But as you add things in the future that volumes can be dependent on, you would add more to that thing. That would be the point of you owning your tree.
Okay.
Okay.
And then also, just in general, like, OS purge, you probably heard of that for like deletion of projects. It's the concerns around having it be totally separate is like, how does that get updated and kept up to date and all tested and all that? And I was just thinking it would be like easier if each project had their own plugin and maintains it yourself. That way we can make sure it stays healthy.
However, it's very easy for us to put that component into a project and then
No one touches it.
add a test case and a key, you'll never notice that it breaks. So it doesn't magically make that better. It makes it easier for you if you're going to be on top of it, but.
Yeah, I was imagining we'd all have our respective test suites and jobs to run on it to make sure that it doesn't regress and it's working.
You just have to know, like, okay, well, now we support whiz bang back and thing. We got to remember to add a case to test it in that situation to notice that it.
Yeah.
I see.
I mean, I think it makes sense for us to have ownership of it then. Any disagreement? Eric will take it. But no, I mean, that way we know when we see changes come in that might impact that we need to make sure it touches that too. And for us, since it's pretty simple now, at least that's a good starting point. So, yeah, I think we're okay with that then.
Okay, cool.
Cool. Do you guys want to come back here afterwards, or are you on tight schedule after that?
Next thing after is schedule.
Okay.
Is the snapshot thing quick?
Not 2 minutes break.
Oh, okay.
I throw a bunch of stuff in there, you can read about.
Yeah, thanks
Okay.
for adding on that.
And you were asking about service tokens, but
That's fine. It's just policy change.
okay.
Let's try to find a slot in time.
Yeah.
You can use the
Okay.
slot that I told you. Yeah. I don't need anyone. Yeah, tomorrow at 10 a.m. But we'll figure it out.
Okay. Ping me later and we'll coordinate. Thanks.
Right now.
Thanks for coming over, guys.
Let's talk about the external events API.
What's it?
We were talking about the external events API for the other stuff.
Yeah.
I do wonder if that
That was a theory that was floated a while ago.
Just to sort of, yeah, trigger the nervous request logic we already have.
I think most of what I want is already in this old spec.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's not new stuff. It's just more of a,
Sounds like it's just triggering it from Cinder when
yeah.
it should work. I mean, it's all implemented the Quay stuff for a Nova snapshot. It's just basically activating it. Cool.
Are we doing something else right now, or?
So somebody so we start dropping into subjects that people
Oh God, that had to be one I put in there.
wanted to talk about in the afternoon for various reasons.
Well, this one that I added here is, I hope, a very short one.
Okay,
If it's a very long one, we're in trouble.
so let's touch on this one and then see where we're at that point. So, status of multi-attach.
Yeah, status of multi-attach. Does it work? Does it make you happy? Does it light things on fire? Does anyone have any idea if anyone's using
I've
it?
actually tested it.
Lo siento. Mi
We are
pantalones
starting to
están
test it
fuego.
for our product now.
Right.
And the biggest thing so far has been finding concerns in drivers, race conditions and tear down attachment stuff that doesn't work right, kind of stuff. So I really just wanted to find out if anybody has looked at this in depth anytime recently and whether anyone thinks it actually works yet.
I haven't looked at it in depth recently, but several years ago when
Yeah.
I was developing it myself, I did test the 3-part driver and tested
Yeah.
attaching and detaching the volume, and that did work.
Yeah.
And my understanding is that it's disabled for all drivers until each driver's vendor.
Right.
Correct.
So drivers have to opt into it.
And so if they don't work, they don't.
Well, the
Maybe
problem
we
is
should
it's
solve those
it's
then.
one of those features that it's real easy to for it to look like it works, but it might have race conditions and, there were some bugs we found. We even found the LVM driver. We thought the LIO target worked that Lee fixed, and we found the other day that it had a bug in it too.
Oh, okay.
Because there's a lot of stuff that's just doesn't show up until you hit corner cases. Well, I guess the news is that we are going to productize this soon, and if everything is broken, you will probably hear about it. But I think it's going to very much be a driver by driver kind of thing for most of it.
Absolutely. So that kind of makes me believe that we need to put more in-depth Tempest tests to test this stuff out.
Yeah, the problem for this is I'm not sure that anyone even knows yet what we would write for Tempest tests that really beat on it in the right way. I mean, you can do a bunch of attach, detach kind of things, but to test it properly, you have to hit data path stuff, which is hard to do in a meaningful way from Tempest because you need some kind of tooling in the instance. And
Well, and that's
all
also
that.
dependent on the file system that's on the volume, and we know that's not going to work for a lot of file systems. And
Yeah.
we kind of wave our hand saying, you better know what you're doing if you.
Well, yeah, I mean,
do
it's
this.
not for traditional file systems, but it's testing. It's hard because upstream currently relies on the Tempest test, which says, "Yep, it attached," and that's pretty much all it does.
Yeah.
So
I could see a lot of corner cases happening with using multi-attach and having multiple volumes attached, and
well, yeah, you
detaching when you already have a ton of them attached,
you
and
get into all kind of messes of
detaching the right.
multiple iSCSI things popping in and out at the same time. And
Yeah, and so I guess that's what I'm kind of thinking about is those are the types of tests that we should add that are much more meaningful, because in a real deployment, you're going to have a ton of volumes attached. And when you try to do a multi-attach along with that, and detach specifically is when you're going to run into the problem.
And I think for our testing internally, we're starting with Ceph, but that's like the easy one because it's not got all the system iSCSI stuff. It's in QEMU.
Yeah.
So you don't run into nearly as much odd connectivity kind of things. So yeah, I mean, if anybody is really wanting to write a bunch of test infrastructure, this would be a good place to do it. I don't know who who's going to do that at this point. But
Don't you have a real person for test?
so
Rally is also a pretty decent place for
I haven't looked at
testing some
Rally in
extreme cases for this too.
I haven't looked at Rally in a while. It probably is useful for some of it.
Mhm.
It's been a long time since I've tried to do anything with it. But I get the sense that a lot of people probably assume that this is done, and I think we may be about to find out if that's actually true or not. So,
Well,
and
yeah.
it's not done for a lot of drivers. So
Yeah, the plumbing between Nova and Cinder is done. But how
it
much
exists.
that part
I mean,
has been tested,
yeah, I don't know that I don't know if it's been tested meaningfully at all. So.
I don't know. I'd be curious about this as well, because I was pretty heavily involved in that effort for a long time.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure, over the coming months, we'll have something to report
Okay.
as far as what we end up discovering with this.
I do have access to a 3-part too, for what it's worth.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's one of our big, issues with testing stuff in our product is back-end dependent stuff.
You need the
It's a
device.
nightmare. You have to
Yeah.
get access to all kind of stuff to test it.
Well, if you have a test suite that you've written or willing to share, I could test it against my 3-part.
We definitely don't yet. We might later. I don't know for sure, but
Okay.
so that was about it. It was mostly a question to which the answer seems to be no one is really sure about the status of it. But
What kind of documentation do we have on this at all in Cinder?
little, I assume.
I mean,
Yeah, Jay.
When you refer to multi-attach, are you is it similar in your context to like MPIO?
No, so it's
No.
no. This is attaching a single volume to multiple instances to do some kind of read-write cluster I/O on them.
Oh, so like if you had a cluster for the few nodes that wanted to share a disk.
yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, and it's really only for people running specialized applications that.
And this is, the gatekeeper is somebody else besides Cinder and your product.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be using some kind of software that's got its own storage stack that's cluster aware and can handle multiple writers. Because that's the only thing it's actually going to ever do anything useful for.
That's the only case it could possibly work in.
The other question with this that I actually have wondered about is part of this whole thing is this concept of read-only attachments. And I am highly skeptical as to whether the read-only stuff works.
I don't know if the read-only flag is ever even used by a lot of the backends at all.
Well, and part of it's done by the Nova side, I think, in the attachment and
Oh, they do it at the libvirt level?
yeah, but I don't think it's ever been tested
Yeah.
at all. So I'm kind of assuming it doesn't really work yet, but that's going to be another piece of this eventually is the read-only thing. Which I think there's very few use cases that anyone cares about the read-only stuff, but there's a couple that, but I think that's been tested even less than multi-attach.
Yeah. Mhm.
So at least the docs have a big red box that says
Yeah,
you have to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's going to be exciting to finally actually try to ship this as a feature since we started working on it like 5 years ago.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
So,
Well, anyway, I can help out, Eric. I'd like to.
yeah,
because
yeah, for sure. I know you were poking at that 3-part patch. You think that's going to go somewhere?
I don't know,
Yeah.
people didn't
Yeah.
view it, and it's a really simple patch, and I'm like, this
Well,
should
the
just
problem
go
is
through.
the only people that would know if it worked, I think, are the 3-part owners. I don't know.
I had tested it ages ago before
Yeah.
this, and before the V2 attachment API.
Right.
It worked, and it won't work for the 3 part.
Yeah. Well, we have, in theory, I think at least 1 or 2 partners that are going to try to test this for some backends. So we should get a good idea of at least if the infrastructure works, but I think the infrastructure is maybe the easier part. The drivers are kind of the tricky thing.
Yeah. Yep.
So I don't know. That's all I had on that, really.
And I wonder if the HA stuff affects this at all either too.
I mean, it shouldn't, but yeah, hopefully not. It's always possible if there's some weird racy code involved in this somewhere, but
And attach and a detach at the same time.
yeah. What could possibly go wrong? Yeah. I think what went wrong with one of them recently was when you did a detach from the second instance when you were using multi-attach, it would just detach it from both of them.
That's not good.
No.
And that could be caused by any number of places.
Well, that was I think that might have been the LVM driver one that did that. Something we missed in the code for the LIO target in there.
Okay. I just want to make sure there's nothing in Brick that is detaching
There's also
the wrong one.
There's also still some future work around this that could be interesting where we totally punted on encrypted volumes with this for now because it would require someone to prove that Lux is like multi-writer safe.
Yeah,
and it might be, but I don't think anyone knows if it is or not.
Yeah.
So I turned it off, and I don't know if anyone's going to be brave enough to ever try to turn it back on.
That sounds scary to me.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah, I was looking over this doc to see if it was still
Relevant.
I can see if it was still right because there was that whole multi-attach create thing that we got rid of.
Yeah.
But it looks like that's gone from here too.
Okay.
Oh, during create time.
Yeah.
Eric's wondering if we need to try to meet tomorrow. Did Matt's answers in the,
I mean, all I really wanted to know was like, because I don't have like a full proposal for this yet, and I really just wanted to know if the Nova guys like would generally be cool with this work starting up again. And it sounded like at least John thought it was reasonable.
Okay.
So I mean,
What
I'm pretty good. The quiescing snapshots.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure the Nova guys weren't going to be like, holy crap, we don't want to touch that. Because I'm probably going to have to convince one of them to help me write it, for one thing.
bad touch, bad touch.
What did you guys think about the hack tool proposal?
I didn't follow all of it. I mean, I looked at it a while ago, but it's
Like if they're willing to hand over the Cinder part of it to the Cinder tree, they can still make changes in it too. But
Since we've got the API that does this, I don't know that it's.
It sounds like an extraordinarily sharp skeleton.
yes,
Yeah.
and I'm very concerned about it.
well, and the question is, why don't we move the parts of it we could into proper functionality in Cinder? Instead of, if you're going to go to all the maintenance of a multi-project code base to make, I mean, at some point you might as
To
well
go
just,
directly to database and hacking the database.
yeah,
seems-
at some point you might as well just start putting it in the project code itself to actually,
yes.
do the right things. Because we're probably not that, I don't know what all that has to do, but it's probably doesn't have to do a whole lot that would be that hard to just add to Cinder as like an API.
Yeah. I mean, I think we have APIs to move the volume from one owner to another already, right?
We do,
Yeah.
but it's kind of it would be a clunky thing for a tool to drive because it's got a bunch of steps and everything. But I mean, we have the code that can
I'm
handle that.
more worried about any tool talking directly to the database for any reason, because look at the mess that we had with reset state, and that was something that we exposed,
Yeah,
and all the problems that were associated with that, and
yeah.
that part of it is very concerning to me.
So it looks like that tool calls the transfer API already.
Maybe that's why Neutron said.
Yeah,
no.
that's what he said, is that they're already using our internal code to do the transfer. So that's good, at least that they're not doing something weird there.
Yeah, I mean, it actually imports the Cinder SQL Alchemy code and just calls into that to poke at things.
Oh, so it's bypassing the whole front end API.
Well, the transfer part goes through the API, but there's other parts that don't. I mean, honestly, like, there's only 2 or 3 things in here. Like, we could just
now.
Well, yeah, but I mean, we could have APIs to do this if we really wanted to maintain this.
It doesn't become Cinder's responsibility for patching the part and key ownership.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering about that too. That's
I mean, that's probably something that we definitely need to address if they're doing this.
well, yeah, because what they're doing now, if you have encrypted volumes, it's going to just totally fall apart.
Right.
Because you'll end up with a volume and the owner of the volume can't access the key.
Yeah, you'd have to create a new key and then for the new owner. And
Well, there's different
Reset.
ways to do it, but I mean, you could also do like we do in Cinder now, where you add a Barbican ACL that says this guy can get the key now. But it's kind of gets messy because then it's still owned by the other guy.
yeah, you'd have to remove that one.
The new owner of the volume cannot delete the key.
Actually, yeah, we would have to create a new key because we wouldn't be able to let the old guy still own it, or it'd be a security problem.
Yeah.
We'd have to just clone it to a new one. And
They also said that ACLs are user based, not project based.
in Barbican.
Yeah. So that came up yesterday. So we would definitely want to clone a new key.
User based.
Yeah, so they're tied to.
I'm having trouble parsing.
On a
what that actually means.
per user basis instead of per project basis.
Exactly. So the entire so like with our stuff,
Yeah,
right, everybody in the project can use the volume,
right.
Mhm.
but each of those people would have to have their own ACL on the key
Oh,
in order for everybody in the
gotcha.
project to be able to boot it.
That's weird because I thought the entirety of OpenStack was standardized around this projects or users.
I did too. I thought Lance was the only one that didn't do that. We've deprecated it and it should disappear fast. But apparently, they must have had some reason for that. I don't know what.
Yeah, I don't know.
I guess if you're in a big project where you don't trust everybody.
Everybody looks like they're falling apart. Time for
Lunchtime.
lunch.
Time for lunch.
Okay.
I gotta leave one,
Oh, yeah.
so I'm gonna miss the pictures.
Oh, man.
Let's make a
Because it's
cardboard
a
wall.
two.
Yeah, no, we need to Photoshop you into
I think we did that one time.
John,
Yeah,
Yeah.
is that in Paris?
I don't remember.
Freaking Pepe.
I'll pull a picture of you up on my phone if you like.
There you go. That might work.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, please do.
Here. Smile. So,
That's perfect.
Oh, that'd be great.
that won't be creepy at all.
Are we doing silly hats again? Is that
I have
what
no
is that?
idea.
They did have silly hats there.
Oh, man.
What's up with the, moving the exceptions back to the drivers? I think that makes sense, but I noticed you're like really doing it.
Yeah, I'm actually doing it, yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Yep.
So that'll just be the new policy. I think it makes sense to,
I think it's cleaner, and then after I'm done with that, I'm gonna reorganize all the exceptions that are in there. So that way they're alphabetical, so you can find them
it's always nice.
instead of searching. I think it's cleaner.
That's sensible.
But there's a lot of exceptions in there. It's gonna take a bit to get through them all.
Yeah.
Mostly because
There's probably a
the
few
unit.
categories of them too, because there's like the AP